top 3 hand tools. Number 1 being a good old-fashioned tape measure. So I think this is like one of the most versatile tools because you can do so much with it, right? You can be, cutting stuff, you can measure stuff, you can work with other people and do it, and you're going to use it just about like every kind of project that you do. So I like a good old-fashioned tape measure. I'll briefly go through how to read it just in case anybody has never used one of these, and then you can go out to Habitat and volunteer and practice, right? So I like the tape measures that just have the lines. Some of them have lots of numbers here that basically tell you what the measurement is. And those are great if you're just learning or, it's kind of hard to see them sometimes, but this one is just straight up lines. So basically the big lines going through match the big number, and that's talking about inches, right? And then within each inch, there's smaller and smaller marks, and those represent different increments. So, the one in the middle, that's the next biggest line, that's my halfway. Then I have a quarter and an eighth and a 16th. And so that's, basically all you need to know in terms of going down to the 16th. You don't really need a tape measure that goes to like the 32nd. That's like way overkill, right? We're probably not going to be that good at cutting anyway. And then I like to point out a few other things on the tape measure because it's just kind of cool to know what's going on, right? So there's some black arrows like this, and these are every foot. So that's a good way to kind of, I guess see how many feet you are. If you're measuring like a long distance, this can kind of cue you into, oh, okay, I'm 30 feet down or 15 feet, right? And then after a foot mark, you'll have numbers in red. That is how many inches after this foot. So like this would be 14 inches is 1 foot, 2 inches. And so that's like a little shortcut once you start getting way out and it's harder to do the math, right? And then there's also these squares that are in red, and these are every 16 inches. So if I go to like my next one is 32 right here. You can see the other one in red right there. Those red squares are tell me I'm every 16 inches, which is something that is used in layout, right? So most of our walls are 16 inches on center. That's what that's talking about. Every 16 inches, there's a stud. So if you're doing any kind of wall layout, or like let's say you're trying to hang something up in your house and you know that there's a stud right here and you want to know where the next one is. Okay, well, it's 16 inches from that one, right? So those red marks can help clue you into what's going on. Yeah, like I said, tape measures are great. They kind of come in like huge varieties. Like you should just get whatever one feels the most comfortable. Whichever one you like the way that it looks on the tape measure, that's the one you should get, because if you're annoyed when you're looking at it, it's going to be a lot harder to use it, right? So get one that you can read the print. It's not too busy, but you know what's going on. That's what I would recommend for a tape measure. So that's one of my top 3. I think another top 3 is right here, my speed square, right? So this square is in the shape of a triangle, but it's not actually called a triangle. It's called a square. And the reason that is because it makes a square line. So on one side of this, there's a little edge right here. And that edge is meant to be, let's see if I can do a little demonstration here. It's meant to be pushed up straight against something. So when this edge is all the way against the straight edge, this is a square line, meaning it's 90 degrees from my edge. So if I wanted to cut something, like a stud that I'm putting in a wall or a shelf or, anything like that, I probably don't want a diagonal line. So this is a good way to help me get a straight line that I'm going to cut. So let's say I need something that's 1 foot. I'll use my tape measure, mark out 1 foot, and then you can put your square up against that mark and make a line. And now I have a line going all the way across the board that is 1 foot. So that's a super handy thing, especially if you're using saws to do your cuts. It'll help you be just a lot more accurate, right? So that's like the reason it's called a speed square, and probably the most common use that you'll have for the square. But it's got a ton of other different functions, which I could really nerd out about, but I'm gonna just show you guys a couple that could come in handy, right? So I don't know how easy this is to see, but on this very bottom edge, there's a line of numbers, and that line of numbers is just degrees. So I can basically mark any kind of angle that I want to. See where you guys can see this. So if this is my 90 degree, let's say maybe I want a line that's, I don't know, 30 degrees. I can move my square, and this corner acts like a pivot. So I can move it until I'm on my degree mark over here. So I'm on 30 degrees, and I'm tight against the wood. And when I draw on this side, now I have a 30-degree line from perpendicular, which I don't know if you guys can see at all, but that's a pretty cool function to just be able to mark out different angles pretty easily. The other fun one is, since this is a square, I know that this angle here is a 45-degree angle. So if I'm marking, I could just put my square all the way up against the wood, just like I would for a 90-degree line, and go like this, and that's a 45-degree line. So now I have 3 different lines that are all different angles, and I didn't really have to think very hard about it. I just used my speed square, right? It's also got some other cool functions, like up here is basically just like a ruler or a tape measure. So I could put this in a corner and say, oh, I'm 3.5 inches or whatever I am, right? It also has like 2 other sets of numbers on here, which probably none of us will ever use, but those are for like cutting roof rafters. And I just like to say that because sometimes you look at this and you're like, why are there so many numbers on here? Like, what's really going on? And that's all it is. It's just basically a tool to help shortcut, you know, being able to do easy tasks with cutting stuff. So that's a really cool tool, and probably my favorite one. So it's a highly underrated tool, I think, but if you get a chance to use one of these, if you're ever volunteering, now you'll know what's going on, right? So that's my, I guess, second one. And then I would say my third tool in my top 3 is going to be a hammer. And again, I picked the hammer up there because it's so versatile, and you can do so many jobs. So many people can be involved, right? That's like kind of how Habitat runs, right? Everybody can use a hammer. Everybody can, you know, grab a tool and get going, right? So I brought 2 different kinds to show you. Obviously, there's a noticeable size difference, and this is going to be a clue in as to what we use it for, right? So this big one, this is a framing hammer. So I'm going to use this if I'm building a wall, if I'm, you know, maybe up on a roof, if I'm putting plywood on something or OSB on something. I'm going to use this big hammer, and basically, like, the way that I like to think about it is like big hammer goes with the bigger nails for the bigger task, right? So framing a wall, building a house, huge task, big nails, big hammer, right? And then this other hammer, it's a lot smaller, it's a little bit lighter. This is going to be my finish hammer, right? So I don't need to be, you know, really pounding anything. I'm going to be using smaller nails, maybe doing some trim, maybe some window or door casing. You can use a smaller hammer, right? And you do want to find the correct one for the job, because they have different tasks or different you know, strengths as to what they're for. And one of them that I'll point out is, you look at the heads of these. This one, let's see this at all, but it has like a waffle pattern on it, right? This one, totally smooth, totally flat. So the waffle pattern, framing nails also actually have a waffle pattern, and what this is supposed to do is just help give you a little bit more traction, a little bit more grip when you go to hit the nail head. So that's kind of a good skill, right? Or good feature, I guess. And the downside is like, well, can't I just use this doing trim too? Well, no, because this waffle is going to imprint on whatever you hit it. If we're doing a wall, we can bang on the stud and like that's totally fine. It's going to get covered up. It's not going to damage the stud. But I don't want this like all over the trim in my house, right? I don't want that pattern showing up. So that's why I would have a nice smooth head, a little bit lighter so it's not so easy to overdo it, right? And then also like the size does matter because I don't want to be using a really, really heavy hammer to do like fine work, right? And I also don't want to be using a small hammer to do big work. This one is so much bigger. So if I go to pull a nail out, I have a ton of leverage on this. Whereas the smaller hammer, I would be like pulling way harder. So it's just going to be a lot of work. So I do like to emphasize that because it'll just make your life a lot easier and you'll have a better time doing stuff if you have the right tool, right? And I guess a little safety pitch here. You are also safer when you have the right tool for the job. So with stuff like this, or if you're using a knife or anything, you know, if it's not in good condition or it's not the right tool, you're going to have to force it a lot more. And if you're forcing it, you're more likely to make a mistake and hurt either yourself or others. So that's my little 2 cents there as well. Any questions on those kind of top three? I'm going to just keep rolling if nobody's got anything, but yeah, feel free to chime in or anything. So my next tool here, this is a cat's paw. And this is another tool that goes hand in hand with a hammer, at least for framing, because this is what you use to take out nails. So if you know how to drive a nail, you're going to need to know how to take a nail out. You're going to mess up. It's going to go wrong at least once. So this has basically 2 different kind of claws on it, one on this end and another one on this end. And this is used to remove nails because it basically is going to go, I'm going to use this with my hammer to kind of dig in and get that claw underneath the nail head. So this would be like if I already put the nail all the way in. If it was sticking out a little bit and I could use my claw of the hammer, right? There's also one of these. If I can use my hammer claw, great. If not, I can use one of these sides, whichever, you know, is more comfortable or fits. And you tap the end of this, get under your nail, and then pry it down, and it's going to pop your nail head up. So either way, it works the same. You hammer on the back and then pull it out. And this is great for digging the nail head out. And then once it's out, I usually switch to my hammer for that reason that I just said, is that you have a ton of more leverage at this, you know, with the length of this arm here. So that's another good one. These, you know, this is a pretty big one. They also have smaller ones. They don't really have a cat's paw for like finish nails. You know, if your nail head is sticking out for like a finish nail, you probably can just pull it out because they're a lot less heavy duty, right? But that's another good one. I'll keep track of which ones I've done so far. Okay, I guess while we're on the topic of framing, I'll go through a couple other squares here, right? So this is the same one that we just talked about, the speed square, but I just wanted to show that they do have bigger ones. So if you're going to be cutting something, this is like a foot long. You're going to be cutting a longer board, like a 2x10, or, you know, a shelf board that's like a foot long. Some of these longer squares are nice to just help you get that straight line, right? That's a segue into a different square, which is also a shape, but that's not what we call it. So this is a framing square. It's in the shape of an L. It's not called an L square, unfortunately. It's a framing square. And again, a square because it makes a perfect 90-degree line. And this square can be used for, you know, a lot of the same things as a speed square. On both sides here, I have a ruler, so I can always use this as something to, you know, measure from point to point. It's also a great straight edge. So, you know, if I need to connect the line from here to here, and you know it's less than the size of my square, then this is a perfect straight edge. I can take my pencil and boom, right? This is also used for doing rafter layouts and stair layouts. So again, that might be not something that we all do super commonly, but cool to know what's going on. And when you see these out, you might be able to tell what's going on, right? So that's our framing square. And then I think while we're on the topic of making straight lines and making square lines, another fun one here is a chalk line. And this is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a line or like a string covered in chalk. And this is another method for making a line from point to point. Let's say it's longer than 6 inches or 2 feet or whatever. I can take this. I actually don't know how many feet these go, but you know, like 30 feet. Like you have a ton of room with these. So basically, on one side of my chalk line here, there's a little hook, and I can hook that on one side of my surface and then pull all the way to the other side. I like to wrap it around my finger once and make sure it's nice and tight. And then once I'm tight, I kind of pull it over the edge. I can snap it and remove my chalk line, and now I have a line of chalk on my area. So if I wanted to cut, you know, a 4x8 sheet of plywood or something, I can use this line. You can use it by yourself, or, you know, it's a good partner tool as well to get a nice line. You don't have to go every 6 inches with the speed square and try to connect your lines that way, right? Just in case anybody was worried about that. So chalk line here, they do come in different colors, so you can pick whichever one you like the best, right? Let's see, another tool that I also have in a couple different sizes is a level. So these are super great. I would recommend that everybody has one of these at home, if for nothing else, for hanging pictures, right? So you can make sure you get it good and you don't have to eyeball it for too long. But this one here is a 2-foot level just for scale, and this is like 8 inches. It's called like a little torpedo level. Super great. I keep this in my tool belt all the time because you never know when you're going to need it, right? And the way that these work is there's 3 different sections here. We primarily use this one, and within that little tube of yellow liquid, there's a little air bubble, and then there's 2 lines that tell me, like, you know, I want to be inside those lines, and I also want to be centered within those lines. That would be totally level, right? So this one, you can see it a little bit better. You know, like if I'm here, I need to go down on my right side to get in the lines, and then, you know, you can get a little bit finer from there, right? So if we are going, I guess, up and down this way, this would be called level. If we're going side to side, like when we're standing up a wall, that's called plumb, right? And then when I'm in that orientation, I would be using this line and bubble, right? So those are the 2 that we normally use. I guess this one is for a 45. I can say that in my career of construction thus far, I have not used that, but cool to know that it's there, right? So if I was on a 45-degree angle, I could check and see if I was actually on a 45-degree angle, right? So these are great too. Love them. They make these in like 8-foot levels. They have some pretty huge ones, but these are a good tool to know how to use. And it wouldn't be a tool if it didn't have some kind of ruler on it, right? Also another vehicle for a straight line. Okay, so that's a good start. I guess I have a few other like assorted tools here, which I just honestly pulled them out of my tool bag and figured I could just talk about them while I'm here. But I would recommend having like one of each of these, you know, in some fashion, just like in your home toolkit, right? So this is a wrench. It's got, you know, this side for tightening nuts and bolts. And these come in all kinds of sizes. So you can buy like a $15 pack that has like way too many sizes, right? Or you could get an adjustable wrench, which is like this one. This is a pretty small adjustable wrench, and it has this little dial in the center, which like I basically turn and they get closer together, and then I can also make it bigger. So I basically only use these because I never know, like, how do I know what size bolt that is? Like, I got to go and get a tape measure and then figure it out. So I just like the adjustable ones. And, you know, it's funny because it is adjustable and they also come in different sizes, which is kind of counterintuitive if you ask me, but they make some that are like, you know, twice this big and work for bigger nuts and bolts. And yeah, so you could just get a couple of those and then be covered for all the sizes that exist, right? But these are great because you can, you know, if you need to tighten something in your sink, or, you know, I used this to help somebody with their bike the other day. It was just in my car, right? But stuff like that, like you can become a handy person if you just have, you know, a couple of versatile tools around, right? Another one that's in that category is like some kind of pliers. These are, I think, just like regular pliers. They have some that are like a really fine point. Those are called needle nose pliers. So those also come in a variety that you can get like a pack of just a few different ones. But, you know, you could pull out like a finish nail with this, or you could also like tighten and loosen something with this if you didn't have a wrench. So got kind of like some jagged, not exactly teeth, but just something to grip and pull out. Also recommend having that around. And then I don't have a ton of these actually, but just a regular screwdriver. I'm going to go through like a drill and a driver, like a battery powered one, but it's always good to have a couple hand screwdrivers around, right? So this one is, I don't know if anybody can see this, but this is a Phillips head, which has like the cross or the plus sign shape. And then the flat one is a flat head. So I would have just one of each of those around, and, you know, any kind of basic toolkit. You can, yeah, change batteries out of stuff. Like all your outlet switches at your house, those are all flatheads. So if you wanted to mess with that, or you're going to paint and need to take all your outlet covers off, like whatever, screwdrivers come super in handy, right? Okay.
Caitie?
Yeah.
Caitie?
Yep.
Every time you lean in, I don't know where your mic is, but that's when you lose your voice. Luckily, your voice is very clear. It's nice, but when you lean in, wherever your mic is getting covered, and your voice tends to get muffled.
Okay, gotcha. How is it back here?
Actually, a little closer was better. So, what did you do with the video, with the camera? No, you were great. The audio was great, but the only time we lost your voice is when you leaned in close.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. I'm kind of shooting in the dark here, so appreciate it. All right. Any questions? Feel free to just chime in. Thanks for the feedback on that. Another one, which is a fun, having your tool belt kind of tool, is this, which is an Allen wrench, which just kind of like the adjustable wrenches, these all come in different sets, and it's basically like a hexagon in various sizes, like from really, really small to kind of bigger. So I don't know if you can see this, but there's like, I don't know, like 10 different sizes on here. And you never know when you're going to need one of these, but I somehow need it frequently, like bikes, If you've ever like put together furniture from somewhere you've ordered, desk chairs, desks, they usually send one with it, but I like to just keep one in my car as well because somehow need it pretty often. But yeah, this is an Allen wrench. So now you know the technical name, I guess. Allen wrench. And I guess another hand tool. These are just little snips. It has a little lock here. You open it up. These are great for just cutting stuff. It's basically like a construction scissor, right? Like it's going to cut through stuff that's a little bit rougher, like burlap or string. These can cut through metal. I'm sure it could do, you know, like plastics too, but they're great. They have like kind of fine teeth on these shear parts right here. And then this one's like spring loaded, so it comes back to you, which is really nice when you let go. So some snips are great to have around, and then you don't have to get your like nice desk scissors dirty, right? What else? I'm gonna start probably transitioning into more of my saws and power tools now. So we're kind of edging out of hand tools after these last two right here. Okay, so these next two, these are both saws, hand saws specifically. So this is, you know, I guess a little bit old fashioned, but they used to build entire houses with hand saws like this, right? Now we have everything, you know, powered, either electric or battery, but I always think it's good to show everybody a handsaw. And when I worked with students, I always made them learn how to cut with a handsaw because I think it's just a good skill to have, right? But this has some pretty jagged teeth on it. I don't know if you can see that, but it works just like a circular saw would, or anything, just takes a little bit more elbow grease, right? So a regular handsaw. And then this is also a saw, but this one is actually, you can see that it sits flat, and this is called a back saw. And I kind of just got this one recently, but basically it's for cutting something if I needed to be like flat against it. Whereas this, I would be cutting like, sorry, I'll do a little demonstration, right? If I was cutting a block of wood like this, I would use my handsaw to go down the wood like this, right? But if I needed to cut, like let's say I needed to cut a chunk out of here, then this back saw that goes nice and flat would work perfect for that. So that's kind of fun. It's almost like you're filleting something, right? But just another kind of saw for like a specific function, I guess. But that's pretty cool. I just wanted to show that off, basically. Any questions? Any questions on any of those hand tools? I'm going to start getting my battery stuff out. So if you got questions.
Caitie, where is your mic? Is it on your body?
It's on my computer.
Oh, because now your voice is gone, but not because you walked away. I think that I mentioned anything made it worse.
I wish I could tell you I'm not very good with Zoom. I'm much better in person. Sometimes I get lost in the technology, but sorry if it's still being difficult.
You're doing okay, Caitie. It's actually, Catherine, it might partly be on your end too, because there's a few people now who've said you're fine. So, and I can hear you fine. Yeah, sorry. This is one of the problems with virtual is it's less than ideal.
Well, we're still doing it. Thanks everybody for hanging in here. Got a few more tools to show you, and these are the fun ones, right? So after we've graduated from all of our hand tools, I got a couple battery tools here. So So any kind of power tool, that's kind of like an umbrella term for anything that's not a hand tool. So it needs some source of power in order to run. One example of this, like I'm saying now, is a battery. You can also get all of these tools electric, so that has a cord, and then there's also pneumatic. And pneumatic is basically like an air-powered tool, which I'm going to show you guys a nail gun in a minute. But so that's what those different categories of tools are, I guess. So the first one I'm starting with is a drill and a driver. Oh, I did that backwards. A drill and a driver. And basically you can use both of them for many of the same functions, but I guess what I like to use to distinguish them is a drill drills a hole. So this is going to be like creating a hole. Like maybe I need to take an inch out of something, and I'm going to use a drill bit that's an inch big and make a hole, right? Versus a driver, which primarily is used to drive in a screw, right? So if I need to screw one 2x4 to another 2x4, I'm going to use a driver. And nowadays, like, these kind of both can do both things, but basically the drill, this one is adjustable up here. So by spinning this first top section, it opens this part either bigger or smaller, and that is important because all of my drill bits here, which I can show you kind of a variety, but those need to go inside here. So if I have a really small one, I'm going to need this smaller. If I have a big one, I need it bigger in order to get my bit in, right? I'm going to demonstrate with a small one so I don't damage my table too bad. But I'm going to put this in, close it up, and wait until I kind of hear it click a couple of times, and then I'm good to go. And one of the features of this driver is, if you can see, like, this has different numbers. So that's going to be my my speed, and I have some control over that. And then up top, it also has a couple different functions. One of them is a drill, which basically the symbol matches what a drill bit looks like. And then one of them has like what looks like a hammer symbol, and that is for, ironically enough, driving screws. So it adds an extra function besides just spinning. It's actually gonna, when you're driving, it's gonna give a little bit of pushing down motion. So it can do both functions if you're in the right one. This one, however, it doesn't have any kind of speed variation, no different settings. It's really only used for driving screws in, and it's got more of that hammer power, which, you're not going to feel it going up and down like a jackhammer, but it's the same idea. It's going to help drive this screw into whatever our material is.
Can you demonstrate? Can you demonstrate with the driver how to put the tip in?
Yes. So
no, not the drill. The driver. The driver.
Oh, yeah.
How do you use the driver? No,
yeah,
but not with that one.
To do both of them.
Okay.
So I got my drill bit in the drill now, and I'm going to go ahead and put my battery in, which just connects on the bottom here, and then you'll hear it click. That's how I know that I'm in, right? And then right here, there's a trigger. So when I spin that, the light comes on and it starts moving. The other thing to note is, well, I'll show you that one on the other one. So, sorry. So now I'm in, I'm ready to go. I'm going to do just like a practice hole in my table. Safety tip, make sure that you're not right under it. So my leg's over here. I'm going to drill here where there's nothing. And I'm going to pull the trigger. And then you could see at a certain point, it kind of fell through. That's when I knew I had drilled a hole all the way through my table, my perfect table. And so, yeah, you can use this for whatever size hole you need. Like I said, these come in lots of different sizes. And this would be to make what's called a pilot hole. So like a hole that I'm going to drill a screw into. And you would want to do that, like, let's say if you don't want to crack the wood or split the wood that you're working with, you can drill this hole first. And you want to use a bit that's just slightly smaller than your screw. So it's going to make it less resistance, basically. But don't do too big of a hole that your screw won't catch on anything, right? So you can just pick this size accordingly. And like most like directions for stuff will have, use a drill bit that's 1/4 inch or 3/8 or whatever, and it'll tell you, and these are all labeled. So that's one kind of bit. Here's like a bigger version, so you can kind of see the same idea, just bigger. And then another bit looks like this. These are called spade bits or paddle bits, and this is makes a bigger hole basically. So this is a 1/2 inch size here, and this is 3/4. They have these up to like, 1.5 inches, and same thing. It just creates a hole into something. I'm not going to drill my table to show you guys that one, but if you ever needed that, this is here. And then they have some other ones that are called a hole saw, and that's basically what it sounds like. It's like, a cylinder, and you can use that to drill a hole, and those get bigger than these paddle or spade bits. So you could have a 4-inch hole saw that you would use to like, put plumbing through, something like that. So if you guys are doing any kind of serious projects at home, you might need to get some of those, right? Any questions on the drill? I'm going to do the driver next, but I'll have this right here if anybody has a lingering question on their mind. So impact driver, I'm attaching the battery same way at the bottom. Hear the click, and then my trigger will give me power. So with the driver, let's see. So the driver, to attach a bit, there's only really one section, which is this front thing, and this pulls out and goes back in. So out and in is going to be everything that I need to attach my bit. I'm using, this is like a medium-sized bit, I guess. Like there's some that are, oops, I just dropped it. Some bits that are really small, and these would attach into, sorry, this is kind of a lot of information, so let me know if I need to repeat or slow down, but this is just basically an attachment, and that is how you would use the small ones. And the advantage to this is like you can buy a pack of like 50 of these, and you only need one of these to use all of them. So that's kind of like best bang for your buck, is to get this little adapter and then a bunch of the small bits. Or you can get a medium-sized one, and then they also have some that are longer. And I mean, really, this is just like depending on the function, you might want a different size for something. I got this this pack, which I can show you guys here. I got this for like $15 online, and it has every drill bit that I showed you tonight, all within here. So it's got some for drilling holes, paddles, small ones, the adapter. It's kind of got everything. So I would recommend something like that if you're just going to get, or if you're new to getting power tools, right? So long-winded way of saying this is how you put a bit in. Once you have your bit, we're going to pull this out, push in our bit, let go of the tip, and then you can give it a little tug to make sure. And then to get it out, I would just go in reverse, pull out my piece on the drill first, pull my bit out and release, and I'm good to go. If you don't pull it out first, like if I just stick my bit in, you know, when I go to drill something, it's just going to fall right out. So you'll know pretty quick if it's not properly in, but right, pull out, push the bit in and release, give it a little tug test, and that's how I know that I am good to go. So with that being said, make sure you pick the right bit for your screw. So these are actually star, it's called a star drive. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's in the shape of a star, as opposed to like a Phillips or, I don't know, I guess they have flathead screws too, but Phillips are the most common and stars also. And I like the star because basically like every little point out on that star gives you more grip for when you are using a drill and driving something in. So you've ever heard somebody say like, oh, I stripped the screw or I stripped the bit or something. What they're talking about is like they basically like worn away all of these edges inside either the screw or on the bit, and that takes away all your grip. So you won't actually be able to like make the screw turn and go in or make it turn and come out. It takes away all of that grip strength basically. And the advantage to using a star is that you have more places for the screw and the bit to meet, and so that's going to give you better grip. Therefore, it's easier to drive these screws basically. So if you don't know how to use a drill or a driver, or you know you're going to be doing it over and over again, I would recommend getting star bits. So I got a little pilot hole which I'm going to use to drill to drive my screw in. So basically, I'm going to get my screw lined up, use my drill. One other thing with the drill, there is a forward and reverse on here. So they have arrows that show you which way. So this one is pointing in the same direction as my bit. That's going forward or putting my screw in. And then on the other side, this, which I would just press in. So whichever one is pressed in is the direction you're in. This one has an arrow that's going backwards. So this would be taking my screw out, right? So before I put my screw in, I'm going to make sure I'm in forward, going this way. Get my screw lined up, and you want to go kind of slow at first just to get the screw started. And then once I got it at this point, I like to use a little extra pressure with my hand, because like as you can see, this position that I'm in, my hand is putting force down here. So if I'm putting force like this, I'm probably actually holding the drill like this, and that is how you would strip a bit. So by putting an extra hand here, you make sure that you're going down right actually where the screw is. Boom, I'm in. And unfortunately, I have nothing under this table, which makes it harder to get the screw back out. But if I was going like directly into a wall or something, you would be able to just pull this out all the way. And I just use my cat's paw there to help get my screw back up. But if you can see, like the screw has threads all the way till here and then nothing at the very top. So that's where I was in my table. That's why I couldn't get it out. So if that ever happens, now you know how to fix it, right? Any questions on this? I'm going to keep moving into our last few tools. I know we're getting close to 8:20. Okay. But any questions, feel free to just shout them out or chat them, and we'll do our best to answer them, okay? Okay, so we are just going up and up in terms of
Excuse me, Katie, I got a question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
On the tool previously before this one, is there a way to make like the screws be longer? Does that make sense? Or
well,
would
you
you
can
have to
just-
use the one that you're using right now?
to make like are you talking about this one? The drill or the driver?
Yes,
The
the
drill.
drill.
They do have bits that are longer. Yeah. So you could just get a bit that's longer. Same thing. You can get screws that are longer. So, you know, kind of depending on your task. I think generally, like if it's a smaller diameter drill, it tends to be shorter, but I'm sure that you could find it, you know, if you needed it to be a lot longer. And definitely like as you get bigger in diameter, you're going to have more choices in terms of length. But I think with the short ones, they are easy to break. So you probably can't find, you know, a really thin one that's like 6 inches long because it's just going to break before you can actually drill your hole. But
Right.
for some of these that are like pretty common, I think that, yeah, you could find some variety in the depth of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's a good question. Okay, so we are going to go into the scale saw, which is probably one of my favorite saws because it's portable, right? Especially if you're getting a battery powered one, which I am. I'm going to do all my talking about it without the battery in, so everybody rest easy. There will be no accidents here tonight, but my battery goes in same way in the back. You'll hear it click. And then if you get like the battery powered ones, you can go all over with this, right? You can go anywhere in your backyard. You can go up on a roof, wherever. So I definitely like the battery for this. It would be, everything would work the same way if you had an electric saw though, right? With the power, with a cord. So a few things that we'll go through on here. This piece right here that you can see moving, this part is called the guard. And this basically, when I'm cutting, it's going to move automatically. Like as I go into a surface, this is going to pull out of the way so the saw blade can actually cut. The purpose of this is to guard the blade from anything it shouldn't be cutting, right? So, and to just protect it. Like when I sit this down, I'm not resting it directly on, you know, concrete or grass or mud or whatever. I have this guard to help protect the blade, right? Next piece to know about is this flat part that's kind of going all around the base of my saw. This is called my table. And as with any other table, ideally it is flat, right? So whenever I'm cutting something, I want this table to be resting flat against something. I don't want to have like one side lifted or the front or back of my saw lifted. I want this sitting flat on my table. So like if you see right here, this is resting all the way flat. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that, right? That's going to be, you know, kind of a recipe for disaster in terms of accidents. And also your cut is not going to come out how you're hoping that it will come out, right? A couple other features up here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a couple different notches, and one of them says 0, and I don't know why exactly it says 0, but basically that is called a guide. And so right in this notch is where my saw blade is actually going. So that is going to help me line up where I want my cut to be. So on my line that I chalked out here earlier, I'm going to line up my guide right next to my line. So I know my saw blade is just barely cutting my line, and I'll have exactly the size that I want. And the reason that we use this guide is because I could just only look at the blade and just make sure I keep the blade right on my line. But there's a few problems with that. One being sometimes it's really hard to see if there's sawdust and stuff flying, which is why you always wear safety glasses, right? Safety plug. Make sure you're wearing those whenever you're using a power tool. So it can be hard to see that, but also if I'm looking at my saw blade and I'm off from my line, then I've basically like already messed up. So, you know, I could be correcting it like over and over and over again, and you just don't have a lot of control when you're just looking at the blade. But if I'm up here looking at my guide is, you know, 2 inches in front of my blade. So if my guide starts getting off, my saw back here is like still okay, still on track. I have time to adjust it slightly, keep going. If I start to get off, you know, you can fix it before you're at that point, basically. So that's where you hopefully will be looking when you're using saw, right? It's out your guide. Another thing I'll point out is this second kind of handle up here. And so this is just to help me give more grip to my saw. I can still see my guide perfectly well from here, but it's going to help me just push this along as I'm going, right? In order to make my saw run, I have a trigger just like the drill and the driver, and it also has another feature which is called a safety, and that is this little bar that goes through the handle and it reaches on both sides. So you could do it with your thumb here or your thumb here. And basically this is a safety because I can't just pull the trigger and make this start going, you know, accidentally. I have to have this depressed in order to pull the trigger and make the saw go. So if I just pick this saw up and I accidentally grab the trigger, it's not going to start, you know, cutting in midair. I have to very intentionally push it down and pull my trigger. And this is unique to a battery saw. Corded saws don't have safeties. I don't know why. They probably should because they're more common, like, you know, on a construction site. But so yeah, be on the lookout for that. If you're like, I'm doing everything right and I can't get it to go, probably has a safety, and you should be able to see it pretty easily right on your handle. What else? I guess there's this one other part that has a dial here, and you can adjust the angle that you're cutting at, right? So it's got different degrees over here, just like our speed square. If I wanted to cut something at an angle, to put it at that angle, and now you can see like my whole saw blade is tilted a little bit. So the same rules would apply. I want my table all the way flat on something, and the saw is already at the angle. So I don't want to hold it at the angle. I'm just going to let the saw do all the work there, right? It's not super common, but I guess good to know that you have that option. And, you know, again, like with all of these tools, it's kind of just nice to know everything that's going on, take out some of the guesswork, right? So skill saw, right? And I'll show you guys one other trick. If you ever volunteer at Habitat, then you'll be like a pro already. But my table is basically completely full here. So this is back to our speed square, which one other really cool function of it is you can use it to help you guide your saw. So if I put this saw speed square all the way flat against my piece of wood, and I put my saw right up next to it, I can still use my guide to, you know, get me on my line. So here's my line. I'll line up with my saw first. Okay, I'm basically right where I want to be. Then I'm going to move this speed square just right to the edge of my saw and hold it tight against my wood. And now when I run this all the way through, all I have to do is keep it flat against my square, and I'm going to be perfectly straight on my line. So that's like cool, you know, little trick to do to help you get more comfortable like steering the saw. It can be kind of tricky at first, especially if you're cutting, you know, a 2x4 that's, you know, 1.5 inches thick. you know, it's kind of hard to push it sometimes. It can be tricky if it starts getting out of whack. So using a speed square as a guide is highly recommended. Any questions on that? Okay, cool. I got one more to show you guys. If anybody has to go, that's totally fine, but it is a fun one. And this is our framing nail gun. So if you are lucky, you'll get to use one of these out on site. It is a little bit nerve-wracking at first. So, you know, if you can come to an in-person workshop someday and try some of these out or try them out on site, that would be great, right? So this one, just like with our hammers, actually, you know, the size of the nail gun is going to be an indicator as to what kind of job you do, right? So big old nail gun here. For reference, here's my driver, which is already kind of big. So this is a pretty heavy duty gun here, right? And this, just like our other tools, has a trigger right here, which is going to be used to fire my nails. And this one is air powered, so it's got a little attachment here. This goes to an air hose. The air hose goes into a compressor. That's how I get my power. So it would be similar to like an extension cord plugging into my saw to make it go. That's where I'm getting the air. And the air is basically, there's a chamber within here that compresses, and that's what gives it the power to drive a nail. So I thought that was pretty cool and worth sharing here. But air powered, this whole thing is the chamber trigger. There's a couple different settings for firing nails. So if I just want to fire one nail, or if I want to do multiple nails, unless you're a pro, you should just be firing one nail because it's, you know, just more dangerous. Then this whole area here is where all of my nails go. So I'm gonna show you guys this. So basically all of my nails come with like either plastic or paper that's holding them together in a clip like this. These, you can tell, are also at an angle, so that angle needs to match my nail gun, and all of that information is down here. It'll tell you what size nail to use, how much air compressed you should have in your compressor, and then also the size of nails that it takes. So make sure you're paying attention to all that information. It should be on one or both of these sides of any nail gun that you use. And these nails go all the way in at the back. There's a little slot right here. This is how I'm going to feed my nails. We want to make sure it's in the same direction. So if I put my nails in this way and it doesn't match up with my nozzle here, it's not going to fire, right? Or it's going to jam. You don't want to do that. So nails go in here. You can slide them all the way down. And then this clip has a little button here. You depress it and loop it right behind your nails. And that is like the feeder. So it's going to keep pushing this forward as my nails come out. Make sure it keeps going. If it's down here, you know, I could fire one and then they're not going to fill in. So you got to make sure that this is all the way behind it, right? And then up here is my, I don't know exactly what that's called, like nose, but that, you can see that when I press it, it depresses, and that is the safety feature on this gun. So if I'm just pulling the trigger like this, I mean, obviously I'm not connected to power right now, so everybody rest easy. But if I'm just pulling the trigger, nails aren't going to just start firing, which is a really great thing because that would be super dangerous. Yeah, so we don't want any accidents if we accidentally pick up our gun like this. So the gun tip or nozzle does need to be compressed before I can pull my trigger, then it'll fire a nail, right? Otherwise, no fire. right? So make sure that tip is depressed. You know, in terms of safety for these, you should always have somebody walk you through how to use it if you haven't used one before, just to make sure you're comfortable. It's got a little bit of a kickback, so you know when you just start firing like this, you want to make sure you're aware and ready for that. Also, you should be wearing safety glasses. These will deflect nails if one were to somehow misfire and come towards you. So make sure you're wearing safety glasses. And then same thing, like, you know, with our saws or our drills, you want to make sure that nothing is underneath the area that you are trying to nail to, just in case, you know, a nail is a little bit long and pokes through or misses. You know, make sure your hand isn't like right under this block of wood that you're nailing it to, right? That would be a really, really big bummer. So, yeah, make sure you keep your wits about you using the nail guns. Any questions on that?
Yep. Difference between a braid and a nailer, and you mentioned the word finish. So what you're demonstrating is like for, you know, like using on the foundation. When you say finish, are you talking heavy duty work?
So yeah, just to clarify, that's a good question. This is a framing nail gun. So this would be, yeah, any kind of like big project, like I'm framing walls or I'm framing a roof or like a floor system or something like that. Basically any like 2x4, 2x6 lumber, that kind of stuff, framing nail gun. There is a finish nail gun, and that's going to be like your interior, like your door casing or your base molding or, you know, something inside usually, but that's going to have like smaller duty nails, like skinnier, smaller in diameter, would be your finish nail gun. So I hope that kind of clarifies. And it's much smaller than this, like a finish nail gun or a stapler. Yeah, those are going to be smaller than this. I don't have one of those, but you know, if you were ever out on site or, you know, go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you'll be able to see like there's a ton of variety in those also. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my problem. There's too many. So then what does the word braid mean?
I think
braid nailer.
I think that's talking about a specific kind of nail, I believe. I kind of did some research when I was looking to get finished nailers too, and I think that's just talking about like I think it's like on the smaller side of nails, even though all finished nail guns are smaller than this. But yeah, I couldn't really tell what made that different than just a regular finished nail gun, but I guess it's a specific type. Sorry, that's not more helpful, but
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions, everybody?
Caitie, I have a quick question. It's Susan. How are you?
Hey.
So if I wanted to get a saw for myself, I have a hand saw, but I'm thinking about getting an electric saw. What would you suggest for I guess a beginner saw?
Yeah, well, I guess a few things to consider is like, do you want to go electric or battery? Of course, like there's plenty of options, but that's something to consider like when you're picking your saw. And I picked a battery just because that's the most portable, so I can use it anywhere. So in my opinion, like they are more expensive, but I got like a whole set of tools, like my drills, drivers, like I just got a whole set and they all use the same battery. So to me, that was like a good investment, but that would be the first thing to consider.
Do you have an example of the battery powered saw with you by any chance?
Just this one that I went through.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So that's a battery. It's the same battery as these.
What's
drill
that saw
drivers.
called again? I'm sorry.
What'd you say?
What's that saw called again?
Oh, a circular saw.
Circular saw. Thank you.
Yeah. So that battery just goes in there. So to me, that was like, yeah, that's what I want. But if you're just like doing stuff around the house, you can get a corded one and then just get an extension cord with it.
I like the battery.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, I guess like you have to decide like convenience, cost, And then like if you have any kind of brand loyalties, which I don't really, but like DeWalt is like super expensive, super high quality. I got these are all Milwaukee, which is like a middle of the road. You know, I haven't had any problem. I've had these for like 3 or 4 years and
Oh,
never
wow.
had an issue with them. So these are great. A little cheaper. Makita is also great. They're the green brand that looks like this. So Makita also has power tools. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with brands, but sometimes like I think we have a preference for what we're most familiar with also. So whatever brand works, and then price wise. And they have like all of these in the store. So you can go and like pick up the saw and like feel it and just see if it's comfortable. Like that's another thing to consider is like, oh, like, this one's like way too big and I can't fit my hand around it. Or this one's so heavy, like I want something a little bit more lightweight. So you can kind of play with some of that in the store as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, any other questions, fire them out. But otherwise, that's everything I got for you guys tonight.
How long is it supposed to be? Is it an hour presentation?
Yeah,
Oh.
we usually go an hour, so I went a little bit
Oh.
over, but
Okay.
Yeah, those are some great questions, great conversations. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that.
This was
Yeah,
really
love the
informative.
interacting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Susan. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you again too.
And just a note for anybody who's new, this is being recorded and you'll be sent the link tomorrow to the recording so you have it for future reference. We'll also the email will also include information on signing up for our other sessions, both our basic skill sessions and our leadership women build sessions, plus a survey about how you found out about us. So we can kind of know where our audience is coming from and ask what kinds of topics you'd be interested in the future. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you, Caitie, for another fabulous presentation.
Yeah,
Really
you got it.
appreciate
Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for your patience with Zoom. Hope you learned
Yeah.
something and had fun.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. It was great. Bye.
Thank
Yeah, you're
you.
welcome.
Have a
Thank
good
you, guys.
night.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.